A widowed millionaire finds his daughter crying as she rummages through the trash in the backyard. With a trembling voice, she says, "The new mommy threw it away." When he sees what it was, he is devastated, and a restlessness begins to grow inside him. From that moment on, everything changes, including what he thought he knew about his own family. Chapter 1. The Hidden Truth. Emma Wilson frantically searched through the trash can behind her father's suburban home in Oakwood, Connecticut. Tears streamed down her 6-year-old face as she dug through discarded coffee grounds and empty cereal boxes. Her small hands trembled as she pulled out crumpled pieces of paper, letters from her grandmother, and a drawing she had made of her family. "Emma, what on earth are you doing?" Daniel Wilson's voice startled her. He stood at the back door, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. At 38, Daniel still had the athletic build from his college swimming days, though worry lines now creased his forehead more often than not. Stephanie threw away Grandma Rose's letters, Emma sobbed, clutching the soggy papers to her chest. "And my drawing of Mommy." Daniel kneeled beside his daughter, gently taking the wet papers from her hands. "Are you sure, sweetheart? Maybe it was an accident." "No." Emma's voice rose with desperation. "I saw her do it. She waited until you went to work." The little girl's eyes darted toward the house, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Grandma Rose said not to let the mean lady change my medicine. She said, it's important." Daniel's stomach tightened. His mother had passed away 3 months ago after a long illness, and her final weeks had been filled with confused statements that the doctors attributed to medication side effects. He had remarried 6 months before that, perhaps too quickly after losing his wife Jessica to a tragic accident 2 years prior. Stephanie Prescott Wilson had been Jessica's home health aide, and their relationship had developed during those difficult times. "Emma, you shouldn't make up stories about Stephanie," he said carefully. "She takes good care of us." "I'm not lying, Daddy." Emma's small face contorted with frustration. "Grandma wrote it down. It's right here." Before Daniel could respond, the back door swung open. Stephanie stood there, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a cashmere sweater despite the warm spring day. At 34, she maintained a polished appearance that sometimes seemed at odds with their casual Connecticut suburb. "There you are," she said, her voice sweet, but her eyes cold as they landed on the papers in Daniel's hands. "What's going on, Emma? You're filthy." "She says you threw away her drawing and some letters from my mother," Daniel said, studying his wife's reaction. Stephanie's laugh tinkled like wind chimes. "Oh, honestly, Daniel, I was just cleaning up. That drawing was covered in juice stains, and those old papers were gathering dust." She reached for Emma, who shrank back. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you cleaned up. I made your favorite snack with a special vitamin shake." Emma looked up at her father with wide, frightened eyes. "Daddy, please. The letters." Something in his daughter's expression made Daniel fold the papers and slip them into his pocket. "I'll help her clean up, Steph. You go ahead and finish whatever you were doing." Stephanie's smile faltered slightly. "Well, all right then. Don't be too long. Dr. Mercer is stopping by to check on Emma's allergies." She turned and walked back into the house, her posture rigid. Once she was gone, Daniel helped Emma wash her hands, promising to look at the papers later. Throughout the afternoon, he caught his daughter watching Stephanie with wary eyes, refusing the special snack and vitamin shake that had been prepared for her. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed and Stephanie was taking a bath, Daniel finally unfolded the crumpled papers in his home office. The drawing showed stick figures. One labeled Mommy appeared to be falling downstairs, while figures labeled Grandma and Emma had sad faces. A tall figure with yellow hair stood nearby with what looked like bottles in her hands. The letters were more disturbing. His mother's normally elegant handwriting was shaky but legible. "Daniel, if you're reading this, you've finally started paying attention. Stephanie isn't who she claims to be. I've been collecting evidence. She's been tampering with my medication and Jessica's before that. I believe she's doing the same with Emma's allergy medicine. There are empty capsules in her makeup bag and different pills. I've been pretending to take them but keeping the real ones hidden. Look in my Bible in the guest room, there's more proof there. Protect Emma. I don't have much time left. Love, Mom." Daniel felt his chest tighten. If this was true, he had ignored warnings from both his mother and daughter. But if it wasn't, if his mother had truly been confused in her final days, he could destroy his marriage with unfounded suspicions. He folded the letter again, his mind racing. His mother had been a retired nurse with a sharp mind until her sudden decline. Could she have been right all along? The thought made him feel physically ill. His contemplation was interrupted by a scream from Emma's room. He bolted upstairs to find his daughter covered in hives, her face swollen and breathing labored. Stephanie was already there, holding a small pink pill. "She must have eaten something she's allergic to," Stephanie said, her voice calm but urgent. "Here, sweetie, take this antihistamine." "No!" Emma knocked the pill away, looking at her father with panic. "Daddy, please, not her medicine." Daniel hesitated, caught between trust and doubt. "Let's take her to the ER," he decided, lifting Emma into his arms. "To be safe." "That's ridiculous, Daniel. I can handle this." Stephanie retrieved the pill. "I was a nurse, remember? Trust me." The phrase echoed his mother's warning. Daniel took the pill from Stephanie's hand and pocketed it. "We're going to the hospital." At Greenwich Hospital, the emergency physician, Dr. Patel, examined Emma, while Daniel nervously paced the room. Stephanie had remained oddly calm during the drive, though her displeasure was evident in her tight-lipped silence. "Has she had reactions like this before?" Dr. Patel asked, reviewing Emma's chart. "Several times in the past few months," Daniel admitted. Ever since I came into their lives," Stephanie interjected smoothly. "Poor Emma has had trouble adjusting. These stress-induced episodes are concerning." Dr. Patel frowned. "Her medical records show increasing frequency of allergic reactions, but the allergens are inconsistently documented. I'd like to run some tests." While the doctor was examining Emma, Daniel discreetly showed him the pink pill. "My wife was going to give her this. Could you tell me what it is?" The doctor studied it briefly. "This isn't medication. It appears to be a compressed sugar candy, similar to those Valentine's conversation hearts." His expression darkened. "Why would someone give this to a child having an allergic reaction?" Daniel felt a cold realization settle over him. "I need to speak with a social worker," he said quietly, "and perhaps the police." Dr. Patel nodded grimly. "I'll arrange for both. In the meantime, I'm admitting Emma for observation and further testing." As he watched his daughter being taken for tests, Daniel remembered the fear in her eyes when she had found the discarded letters. His little girl had been trying to tell him something important, and he had almost failed to listen. Now, looking at Stephanie's carefully composed expression as she spoke with a nurse, he wondered what other truths he might have missed. A social worker named Melissa Jenkins arrived shortly after, taking Daniel aside while hospital security kept an eye on Stephanie. "Mr. Wilson, we need to discuss some concerns about your daughter's care," Melissa began gently. "Dr. Patel has informed me about the counterfeit medication and the pattern of unexplained allergic reactions." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "I'm beginning to think my wife might be—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Intentionally making Emma ill," Melissa supplied. "We need to proceed carefully here. If you have any evidence beyond tonight's incident, we'll need to document it." "My mother suspected something," Daniel said, pulling out the crumpled letters. "I found these today. There may be more evidence at home." As Melissa reviewed the letters, Daniel watched Emma through the observation window, her small body connected to monitors, her face still swollen but her breathing easier. A terrible suspicion was taking root in his mind, one that would change everything if proven true. "I should have listened sooner," he whispered, placing his palm against the cold glass. "I'm so sorry, Emma." Chapter 2. Grandmother's Warnings. Daniel sat beside Emma's hospital bed as morning light filtered through the blinds. She had finally fallen asleep after hours of tests and treatment. The hives had subsided, but the questions multiplying in Daniel's mind had not. Stephanie had left reluctantly around midnight after the social worker suggested that Emma needed rest. Daniel had pretended to agree that they both shouldn't stay overnight, promising to call if anything changed. The moment Stephanie was gone, he had felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Mr. Wilson?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Patel stood in the doorway with a tablet in hand. "May I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, the doctor's expression was grave. "The tests confirm Emma had a significant allergic reaction, but we can't identify a specific trigger from her meal yesterday. More concerning is what we found in her blood work." "What is it?" Daniel asked, his heart pounding. "Traces of a common antihistamine medication, but at much higher doses than would be prescribed for a child her age." Dr. Patel lowered his voice. "This suggests someone may have been giving her medication, then triggering reactions. It's consistent with a condition called factitious disorder, imposed on another." "Munchausen by proxy," Daniel whispered, the term surfacing from some forgotten news article. "Yes, though we prefer the clinical term now. It's a serious form of abuse, where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care." Dr. Patel paused. "Mr. Wilson, I must ask, who prepares Emma's meals and administers her medication?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. "My wife, Stephanie," Daniel admitted, his voice hollow. "She was a nurse before we married." As he spoke the words, doubt crept in. Had he ever actually verified Stephanie's nursing credentials? "I see. The hospital has already contacted Child Protective Services, as required by law. They'll want to speak with you and Emma." Dr. Patel placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "For now, I recommend Emma remain here under observation, and that your wife not be left alone with her." Daniel nodded numbly. "I need to go home and get some things for Emma, and—" He hesitated. "There's something I need to check. A security officer can escort you, if you'd like." "No," Daniel said, thinking of his mother's letter. "I need to do this myself, but please don't let anyone but me see Emma until I return." After leaving instructions with the nursing staff, Daniel drove home with his mind reeling. 6 months ago, he'd thought himself lucky to have found Stephanie. She had been compassionate during Jessica's illness, a steady presence after her accident, and seemed to genuinely care for Emma. Now he questioned everything. The house was quiet when he arrived. A note on the kitchen counter informed him that Stephanie had gone grocery shopping. Relief washed over him. He could search without confrontation. Daniel went straight to the guest room where his mother had stayed during her illness. Rose Wilson had been a formidable woman, a retired nurse who raised Daniel alone after his father abandoned them. She had moved in with them after Jessica's accident, helping with Emma until her own health declined rapidly. Too rapidly, he now realized, with growing dread. His mother's Bible still sat on the nightstand. Daniel opened it with trembling hands. Inside, he found a small key taped to the back cover and a note. "Safety Deposit Box, Oakwood Community Bank, Treforth-Threen." Daniel stared at the key. Whatever evidence his mother had collected, she'd been cautious enough to store it securely off-site. Smart, but it also meant he couldn't access it immediately. He searched the room thoroughly, looking for anything else his mother might have left. In the seam of the mattress, he found a small notebook. Inside were dates, times, and observations in his mother's handwriting. March 3rd. Stephanie switched my heart medication again. Kept real pill under tongue. Feel dizzy from whatever she gave me instead. March 10th. Overheard S talking to someone on phone about accelerating the process and insurance policies. Mentioned Emma might need special care after I'm gone. God help me. March 15th. Emma had another allergic reaction after S. Gave her special smoothie. Symptoms don't match her known allergies. The entries continued, documenting suspicious behaviors, overheard conversations, and physical symptoms experienced by both Rose and Emma. The final entry was dated just 3 days before Rose's sudden deterioration that had sent her to the hospital for the last time. Daniel won't believe me. S has him completely fooled. Found something important. Birth certificate, nursing license, both forgeries. Her real name isn't Stephanie Prescott. Previous identity, Veronica Blackwell. Connected to cases in Oregon, Nevada. Evidence in safe deposit box now. If you're reading this, Daniel, Get Emma away from her. Daniel felt sick. He tucked the notebook into his jacket and continued searching. In his mother's old suitcase, he found a burner phone hidden in the lining. The call history showed multiple conversations with someone listed only as Detective M. Before he could investigate further, he heard the garage door opening. Stephanie was home. Daniel quickly replaced everything except the notebook and key and headed downstairs with what he hoped was a casual expression. "Daniel!" Stephanie seemed genuinely surprised to see him. "How's Emma? Why didn't you call me?" "She's stable," he said, watching her carefully. "They want to keep her for observation. I came to get her favorite stuffed animal and some clothes." "I'll pack her things," Stephanie offered, moving toward the stairs. "No need," Daniel said quickly. "I know where everything is. Actually, could you make some coffee? I barely slept." While Stephanie busied herself in the kitchen, Daniel quickly packed a bag for Emma, adding his mother's notebook and the key. He needed time to process this information, to visit the bank, and to contact this mysterious detective. "Daniel," Stephanie called from the kitchen. "I picked up Emma's new prescription while I was out. We should bring it to the hospital." He froze. "What prescription?" "Dr. Mercer called it in this morning. For her allergies." Daniel entered the kitchen, where Stephanie held out a pharmacy. Dr. Mercer hasn't seen Emma since her reaction. How could he prescribe anything? A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed Stephanie's face before her expression smoothed. "He must have been contacted by the hospital. I just picked it up when they called." "Which pharmacy?" Daniel asked, taking the bag but not opening it. "Brighton Pharmacy on Elm." "That's strange," Daniel said, maintaining eye contact. "We've always used Valley drugs on Main." Stephanie's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "They were out of her medication. Dr. Mercer sent it to Brighton instead. Is there a problem?" "No problem," Daniel said, slipping the bag into his pocket. "I just want to make sure we're giving Emma the right medication. The hospital is running their own tests, so I'll have them verify this first." "You don't trust me. It wasn't a question." Daniel chose his words carefully. "I'm just being thorough. Emma's health is the priority." "Of course it is," Stephanie agreed, though her eyes had hardened. "That's all I've ever cared about. Both of you." Daniel nodded, gathering. "Emma's bag. I'm heading back to the hospital. I might stay overnight again." "I'll come with you," Stephanie insisted, reaching for her purse. "Actually," Daniel said, "could you stay and call Emma's school? Explain she'll be absent for a few days, and maybe prepare the guest room. The doctor mentioned she might need a quiet space to recover." The request seemed to satisfy Stephanie. "Of course, give her a kiss for me." As Daniel drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror to see Stephanie watching from the window, phone already at her ear. He needed answers, and he needed them quickly. His first stop would be Oakwood Community Bank, then the hospital to show Dr. Patel the supposed prescription. At a red light, he carefully opened the pharmacy bag. Inside was a bottle labeled with Emma's name and diphenhydramine 50 mg. The dosage made him frown. It was the adult formulation, much too strong for a 6-year-old. He examined one of the pink capsules, so similar to the candy pill Stephanie had tried to give Emma during her reaction. The light changed and Daniel continued toward the bank, his mind racing. If his mother was right, if Stephanie wasn't who she claimed to be, then Emma had been in danger right under his roof. The thought that he might have brought this danger into their lives himself was almost unbearable. "I'll fix this, Emma," he whispered to the empty car. "I promise." At the bank, Daniel presented his ID and the key. The manager escorted him to the vault where box 04113 waited. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he inserted the key and opened the metal container. Inside lay a manila envelope with "For Daniel" written in his mother's handwriting. Alone in the bank's private viewing room, he spread the contents across the table. Photocopies of nursing licenses and birth certificates with different names but the same photograph. Newspaper, clippings about suspicious incidents involving caretakers, insurance policies, and a business card for Detective Michael Reynolds of Hartford Private Investigations. Beneath it all was a sealed letter, addressed to him in his mother's handwriting. Daniel opened it with a heavy heart, knowing these might be the last words his mother had left for him. Chapter 3. Uncovering Deceptions. My dearest Daniel, his mother's letter began, if you're reading this, I fear my suspicions were correct. I pray I'm wrong, but my instincts as a nurse and a mother tell me otherwise. Stephanie, or whatever her real name is not who she claims to be. Daniel's eyes blurred as he read his mother's meticulous documentation of her suspicions. Rose had first become concerned when Jessica's condition had deteriorated rapidly under Stephanie's care. After Jessica's accident, Rose had noticed inconsistencies in Stephanie's stories about her nursing background. When Rose moved in to help, with Emma, she began experiencing strange symptoms herself: dizziness, confusion, fatigue, always after Stephanie prepared her meals or administered her medication. I started keeping my pills under my tongue and disposing of them later, Rose wrote. My symptoms improved immediately. That's when I began watching her with Emma. The allergic reactions always happened after Stephanie gave her special treats or vitamins. I contacted an old colleague at Hartford Hospital who put me in touch with Detective Reynolds. He's been investigating similar cases across the Northeast. The letter concluded with a desperate plea. Protect Emma. Don't confront. Stephanie alone, she's dangerous and cunning. Contact Detective Reynolds immediately. I've paid his retainer through my estate. I love you both more than words can say. Trust your instincts, Daniel. You know when something isn't right. Daniel carefully refolded the letter, his hands shaking with grief and anger. His mother had tried to warn him, and he'd dismissed her concerns as confusion or medication side effects. He gathered everything into the manila envelope and locked the safe deposit box. He needed to contact Detective Reynolds immediately. In his car, Daniel dialed the number from the business card. Reynolds Investigations, a gruff voice answered. This is Daniel Wilson. My mother, Rose Wilson, hired you before she... Daniel's voice caught. There was a pause on the line. Mr. Wilson, I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your mother was very concerned about your situation. I'm beginning to understand why, Daniel said, explaining Emma's recent hospitalization and his discovery of Rose's evidence. Meet me at Cooper's Diner off Route 9 in 30 minutes, Reynolds said. Bring everything you found. And Mr. Wilson? Don't tell anyone where you're going. The diner was a nondescript establishment with vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting. Detective Michael Reynolds was easy to spot, a burly man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes that missed nothing. Your mother was a remarkable woman, Reynolds said after they'd ordered coffee. Smart, observant, and fiercely protective. She contacted me about 3 months before she passed away. What exactly did she hire you to investigate? Daniel asked. Reynolds opened a leather portfolio. Stephanie Prescott, or should I say Veronica Blackwell, or perhaps Samantha Pearson, or Tiffany Laurent. She's used at least 5 different identities that we've documented. He laid out photographs of Stephanie with different hair colors and styles alongside various identification documents. Your mother suspected her of medical manipulation, intentionally making others ill to gain attention, control, or financial benefit. Munchausen by proxy, Daniel said, remembering Dr. Patel's words. Reynolds nodded. It's now called factitious. Disorder imposed on another, but yes, your mother believed Stephanie was doing this to her, had done it to your late wife and was beginning to target your daughter. Daniel felt physically ill. Do you have proof? Circumstantial evidence, mostly. Your mother was gathering more when her health declined suddenly. She managed to send me these documents before she was hospitalized. Reynolds pushed a folder across the table. Stephanie, let's stick with that name, has a pattern. She targets vulnerable families, often with medical backgrounds. She establishes herself as a caregiver, then creates medical crises she can manage. Eventually, these crises escalate. Daniel flipped through the folder, his horror growing. There were reports from Oregon, Nevada, and Maine detailing similar situations. In each case, Stephanie had insinuated herself into families experiencing health crises, assumed caregiver roles, and eventually gained control over finances and medical decisions. What about her nursing credentials? Forgeries. Reynolds confirmed. High quality but fake. She has enough medical knowledge to be convincing, probably picked up from her victims and extensive research, but she's never been licensed. And her pregnancy? Daniel asked, the question causing Reynolds to raise an eyebrow. She's claiming to be pregnant. Daniel nodded. About 4 months along, we were planning to tell Emma soon. Reynolds made a note. I haven't observed any evidence of actual pregnancy during my surveillance. It would fit her pattern to fake a pregnancy to strengthen her position in your family. Surveillance? Daniel repeated. Your mother authorized it before she passed away. I've been watching your house, following Stephanie's movements. She's been meeting regularly with someone, a man in his 50s, well-dressed, drives a Mercedes. They're careful, always meeting in public places. But it's clearly more than casual acquaintance. Dr. Mercer, Daniel said grimly. He's been treating Emma for her allergies since Stephanie came into our lives. Reynolds' eyes narrowed. We should look into his credentials as well. If he's writing prescriptions for medications Emma doesn't need. Daniel pulled out the pharmacy bag. Like this? Stephanie claimed Mercer called it in this morning. It's adult-strength antihistamine. Reynolds examined the bottle carefully. This is concerning. We should have it analyzed. She could be replacing the contents with something else. I need to get back to Emma, Daniel said, checking his watch. She's alone at the hospital, and I don't want Stephanie to visit her without me present. I'll drive separately and keep watch, Reynolds offered. In the meantime, I'll have my associate check on Dr. Mercer's credentials and continue surveillance on your home. As they stood to leave, Reynolds placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Daniel, listen carefully. People with this disorder are extremely manipulative. Stephanie has created a carefully constructed reality where she's the hero, the loving wife, the caring nurse. When that reality is threatened, she may become desperate. Don't confront her until we have everything in place. What do you mean? Everything in place? Evidence, witnesses, legal protection for you and Emma. Reynolds' expression was grave. Your mother tried to gather proof, but her health, possibly compromised by Stephanie, prevented her from completing the task. We need to be more careful. My daughter is in danger now, Daniel insisted. Which is why you'll stay with her at the hospital while I set up surveillance. I'll have micro cameras installed in your home tonight while Stephanie is asleep. We need to document what she's doing with medications, food, and any communication with accomplices. Daniel reluctantly agreed to the plan. As they parted in the parking lot, Reynolds handed him a small device. It looks like a key fob but contains a panic button and audio recorder. Keep it with you at all times. Back at the hospital, Daniel found Emma awake and looking better. Her hives had subsided, and she was coloring quietly when he entered. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up. "You came back!" "Of course I did, sweetie." He hugged her tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of her hair. "I'll always come back for you." Emma's expression grew serious. "Is she here?" "No, Stephanie's at home." Daniel sat on the edge of the bed. "Emma, I need to ask you something important. Has Stephanie ever given you medicine that made you feel funny or sick?" Emma nodded slowly. "The special vitamins make my tummy hurt, and sometimes the smoothies make my face all hot and itchy." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Grandma Rose said not to drink them, but Stephanie gets mad if I don't." "Did Grandma Rose tell you anything else about Stephanie?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "She said Stephanie isn't nice like she pretends. She said to always tell you if Stephanie tries to give me medicine." She clutched her father's hand. "I tried to tell you, Daddy, I really did." "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry I didn't listen better." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. "But I'm listening now, and I promise nothing bad will happen to you." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Wilson, your wife is at the nurse's station asking to see Emma." Daniel tensed. "Please tell her Emma is resting and can't have visitors. Right now." "She's insisting. Says she brought medication that Emma needs." Emma doesn't need any medication except what Dr. Patel has prescribed, Daniel said firmly. Please inform security if she continues to insist. The nurse nodded and left. Daniel turned back to Emma, trying to keep his expression calm despite the turmoil inside him. Everything's going to be okay, Em. I promise. Is Stephanie in trouble? Emma asked, surprisingly perceptive. Daniel chose his words carefully. Stephanie has been making some bad choices that might have been making you sick. The doctors are helping us figure it out. Like how Mommy got sick? Emma asked innocently. The question hit Daniel like a physical blow. What do you mean, sweetheart? Emma looked down at her coloring book. I heard Grandma Rose telling her friend on the phone. She said Stephanie made Mommy's medicine wrong on purpose. Is that true, Daddy? Daniel struggled to maintain his composure. I don't know, Emma. But we're going to find out. A soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Patel entered with a tablet in hand. Good news, Emma. Your tests look much better today. If things continue improving, you might go home tomorrow. Daniel caught the doctor's eye. Actually, doctor, I'd like to speak with you privately about Emma's home situation. Of course, Dr. Patel replied. Emma, the art therapist, is in the playroom if you'd like to join the other children for a while. Once Emma had left with a nurse, Daniel explained everything. The evidence his mother had collected, Detective Reynolds' investigation, the falsified credentials, and the suspicious prescription. Dr. Patel listened attentively, his expression growing increasingly concerned. This is very serious, Mr. Wilson. If what you're saying is true, Emma has been subjected to medical abuse. We can't release her into that environment. I understand, Daniel said. I'm planning to take Emma to a hotel until I can arrange for a restraining order against Stephanie. That's wise, Dr. Patel agreed. I'll document my medical concerns officially, which will help with any legal proceedings, and I'll alert hospital security about your wife's unauthorized medication. As they finished talking, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Reynolds. S left hospital, following her to office building downtown. Dr. M works there, continuing surveillance. Daniel showed Dr. Patel the message. Detective Reynolds is helping me gather evidence. We need to document everything Stephanie has been doing. I'll have our hospital pharmacist analyze that prescription she brought, Dr. Patel offered. If the contents don't match the label, that's concrete evidence of tampering. Another text from Reynolds appeared. S and Dr. M in heated conversation. Taking photos, we'll update soon. Daniel stared at his phone, a mixture of relief and dread washing over him. The truth was finally coming to light, but what would Stephanie do when cornered, and how much damage had she already done to his family? Chapter 4. Shattered Trust. That evening, Daniel sat beside Emma's hospital bed watching her sleep. Her small face was peaceful now. The angry red hives finally subsided. A children's movie played quietly on the room's TV, casting soft blue light across the darkened room. He held his daughter's hand, his mind racing with everything he'd learned in the past 24 hours. His phone vibrated. Another text from Reynolds. Cameras installed. S returned home, agitated, making phone calls, audio recording. Stay where you are until morning. Daniel replied with a simple, okay, and returned to his vigil. The thought that Stephanie, the woman he had married, had trusted with his daughter, might have been systematically harming his family was almost too terrible to comprehend. And yet, the evidence was mounting. Around midnight, a gentle knock at the door roused him from his thoughts. It was Dr. Patel, looking grave. Mr. Wilson, may I speak with you outside? In the hallway, the doctor's expression was somber. Our pharmacy analyzed the medication your wife brought in. The capsules contain a mixture of crushed antihistamine and ipecac syrup. Ipecac, Daniel repeated, confused. It's an emetic. It induces vomiting. Years ago, it was kept in homes as an emergency treatment for poisoning, but it's no longer recommended for that purpose. Combined with antihistamine, it would cause severe gastrointestinal distress, dizziness, and could potentially trigger an inflammatory response that might mimic an allergic reaction. Daniel felt his stomach turn. She was deliberately making Emma sick. It appears so. I've documented everything. and contacted Child Protective Services again with this new information. Dr. Patel paused. There's more. I took the liberty of reviewing your late wife's medical records since you mentioned concerns about her care as well. Daniel's heart raced. And? Jessica was admitted 3 times in the month before her accident with symptoms consistent with gradual anticoagulant poisoning, bruising, nosebleeds, dizziness. The doctors suspected a clotting disorder, but tests were inconclusive. According to the records, her home health aide, Stephanie, reported administering her prescribed medications. The implication hung in the air between them. Daniel braced, himself against the wall, feeling suddenly lightheaded. Are you saying Stephanie might have contributed to Jessica's accident, to her fall down the stairs? Dr. Patel chose his words carefully. I'm saying someone with medical knowledge could have induced symptoms of dizziness and weakness by administering unprescribed anticoagulants. Those symptoms would increase the risk of falls. Whether this was deliberate or negligent would be a matter for investigation. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering Jessica's final weeks, her increasing frailty, her complaints of dizziness that doctors attributed to her illness. Had Stephanie been slowly poisoning his wife while positioning herself as the dedicated caregiver? I've contacted the medical examiner's office, Dr. Patel continued quietly. Given these new concerns, they may want to review Jessica's case. Thank you, Daniel managed to say, though his throat felt tight with grief and rage. What about my mother? Could Stephanie have... It's possible, Dr. Patel acknowledged. The pattern is similar: unexplained symptoms, rapid decline while under her care. Again, this would require investigation. Daniel nodded, trying to process the horror of what he was hearing. What happens now? For Emma's protection, I'm recommending she remain hospitalized while the investigation proceeds. CPS will want to interview both of you, and they'll likely recommend a temporary restraining order against your wife to prevent her from having contact with Emma. I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter, Daniel said firmly. Get some rest, Mr. Wilson. Tomorrow will be challenging. But rest was impossible. Daniel returned to Emma's room and spent the night watching his daughter sleep, haunted by the thought that he had failed to protect both her and Jessica from the predator he had invited into their home. Morning brought a flurry of activity. A representative from Child Protective Services arrived to interview Daniel, followed by Detective Reynolds with updates from his surveillance. Stephanie spent most of the night on the phone, Reynolds reported, showing Daniel photographs on his tablet. We caught her removing items from a hidden compartment in your bathroom. Empty capsules, unmarked bottles, a syringe. She's destroying evidence. We need to stop her, Daniel insisted. We're building the case carefully, Reynolds cautioned. My associate ran background checks on Dr. Mercer. His medical license is legitimate, but there have been 2 malpractice suits settled out of court. Both involved questionable prescriptions for family members of wealthy patients who later experienced accidental health crises. He's her accomplice, Daniel realized. It appears so. They met again this morning at a cafe downtown. Based on their body language, they're arguing about next steps. Stephanie seems to be pressuring him for something. Daniel's phone rang. Stephanie's number. He showed the screen to Reynolds, who nodded. Answer it. Act normal. Put it on speaker. Daniel. Stephanie's voice was tearful. When are you coming home? I'm so worried about Emma. The doctors want to keep her for more tests, Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice steady. She's doing better, but they're concerned about the frequency of her reactions. I should be there, Stephanie insisted. I'm her mother now. The possessive statement made Daniel's skin crawl. You should rest, Steph. Think of the baby. There was a fractional pause before Stephanie responded. That's sweet, but I'm fine. Emma needs me, Dr. Mercer called again. He's concerned about her treatment plan. Dr. Patel has everything under control, Daniel said. He's an excellent physician. But he doesn't know Emma's history like we do, Stephanie countered, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. Dr. Mercer has been treating her allergies for months. Speaking of that, Daniel said, catching Reynolds' approving nod. The pharmacy said they have no record of Dr. Mercer calling in that prescription. You picked up. Another pause, longer this time. They must have made a mistake. It was definitely from Mercer's office. Maybe they filed it under the wrong name. Maybe, Daniel said noncommittally. Listen, I need to go. Emma's waking up. Daniel, wait. Stephanie's voice took on an urgent tone. There's something you should know. Your mother. She had delusions near the end. She accused me of terrible things. If you found any of her writings, you need to know they're not reliable. Her medication caused paranoia. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. What kind of things did she accuse you of, Stephanie? Ridiculous things, Stephanie said with a nervous laugh. That I was tampering with medications, trying to make people sick. It was the medication talking, Daniel. Ask any doctor. I'll keep that in mind, Daniel said, his voice carefully neutral. I have to go now. After hanging up, he turned to Reynolds. She knows I found my mother's evidence. She's getting desperate, Reynolds agreed. That's when people make mistakes. Keep playing along. We need more time to document everything. The CPS representative, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Carter, had been listening intently. Mr. Wilson, based on the evidence presented and Dr. Patel's medical findings, I'm recommending immediate emergency custody to you with a no-contact order for your wife pending further investigation. Thank you, Daniel said with relief. However, she continued, we'll need to establish that you were unaware of the abuse and took appropriate action once you became aware. Your reaction now is appropriate, but the court will want to know why you didn't notice sooner. The question stung, but Daniel understood its necessity. I trusted her, he said simply. She came into our lives during a time of grief. She was Jessica's caregiver, someone who seemed to care deeply for my family. I missed the signs because I couldn't imagine someone would deliberately harm a child or an ill person. Mrs. Carter nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, that's often how these situations develop. The perpetrators are skilled manipulators who target vulnerable families. They're experts at appearing devoted and concerned. The conversation was interrupted by Emma's call from the room. Daniel excused himself to check on her. She was sitting up in bed, looking much better. Daddy, can we go home soon? She asked. Daniel sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. Not just yet, sweetheart. The doctors want to make sure you're completely better first, and then we might stay somewhere else for a little while. Maybe at Uncle Jake's lake house. Emma's eyes widened. Like a vacation? Something like that, Daniel smiled, relieved at her enthusiasm. Would you like that? Emma nodded eagerly, then her expression grew serious. Will Stephanie come too? No, honey. It would just be you and me. Emma's relief was palpable. Good. I don't want her to come. She's not nice when you're not looking. What do you mean, Em? Daniel asked gently. Emma looked down at her hands. She gets mad if I don't take the special vitamins. She said if I told you about them, she would send me away to a hospital for bad children, and you wouldn't want me anymore. Daniel felt a surge of protective rage. Emma, look at me, he said, lifting her chin gently. Nothing Stephanie says is true. I will always want you. You're the most important person in my world, and nothing could ever change that. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. Promise? I promise with all my heart, Daniel said, hugging her tightly. And you're not in trouble for telling me the truth. You were very brave. As Emma settled back against her pillows, Daniel stepped into the hallway where Reynolds was waiting. We have a problem, the detective said quietly. Stephanie just withdrew $10,000 from your joint account and purchased a train ticket to New York, departing in 2 hours. She's running, Daniel realized. Looks that way. I've notified local police, but we don't have enough for an arrest yet. The evidence is still circumstantial, Daniel thought quickly. What if I confronted her, got her to admit what she's been doing? Too risky, Reynolds warned. She's cornered now, which makes her dangerous. Let the police handle this. But Daniel wasn't listening anymore. His phone had buzzed with a text from Stephanie. Coming to hospital now. We need to talk about Emma's future. I know what's best for her. He showed Reynolds the message. She's coming here. This might be our only chance to get a confession. Reynolds considered this. We could wire you up. Have officers standing. But Daniel, be careful. Don't accuse her directly. Lead her into admissions. I know what to do, Daniel said grimly. I've spent months watching her manipulate everyone around her. It's time she got a taste of her own medicine. Chapter 5. Confrontation. The hospital conference room felt too small, too sterile for the confrontation that was about to unfold. Daniel sat at the oval table, a hidden microphone taped to his chest beneath his shirt. Detective Reynolds and 2 police officers waited in an adjacent room, listening through an audio feed. Emma remained safely in her room with a security guard posted outside her door. Daniel's heart pounded as he rehearsed what he would say. The goal was to get Stephanie to admit what she had done, to Emma, to his mother, possibly to Jessica. But Reynolds had warned him not to be too direct, to let her incriminate herself naturally. The door opened and Stephanie entered. Her appearance was immaculate as always, blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, designer clothes that hugged her slender figure. The only sign of stress was a tightness around her eyes. "Daniel?" she said with a smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Why are we meeting in here? I want to see Emma." "Emma's resting," Daniel said, gesturing for her to sit. "The doctors don't want her disturbed." Stephanie's smile faltered slightly. "I'm her stepmother. I have every right to see her." "Please sit down," Daniel repeated, his voice firm. "We need to talk about Emma's condition." Reluctantly, Stephanie took a seat across from him. "What did the doctors say? Is it another allergic reaction? I knew we should have been more careful with her diet." "That's just it," Daniel said, watching her carefully. "Dr. Patel can't identify what caused her reaction. There was no allergen in what she ate." "Doctors make mistakes all the time," Stephanie dismissed. "That's why I consulted Dr. Mercer. He understands Emma's condition better." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, Dr. Mercer. You two seem to have a very collaborative relationship." Something flashed in Stephanie's eyes, wariness perhaps. "He's a respected allergist, Daniel. I was a nurse. Of course we communicate about Emma's care." "We're a nurse?" Daniel corrected softly. "Excuse me? You said you were a nurse, present tense. But you're not practicing now, right? Not since you married me." Stephanie waved a hand dismissively. "Figure of speech. Once a nurse, always a nurse. It becomes part of your identity." "Like your identity as Veronica Blackwell?" Daniel asked, keeping his tone conversational. "Or was it Samantha Pearson in Oregon?" The color drained from Stephanie's face, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about. Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," Daniel said, sliding a copy of one of the documents from his mother's safe deposit box across the table. "My mother was very thorough in her investigation before she became too ill to continue." Stephanie glanced at the document, then pushed it away as if it might burn her. "Your mother was confused and paranoid at the end. The medications affected her mind. I tried to tell you." "That's interesting," Daniel said, "because her symptoms improved dramatically whenever you weren't the one giving her medication. She documented everything, Stephanie. Or should I call you by your real name?" "This is ridiculous," Stephanie snapped, standing up. "I'm not going to sit here and be accused of what exactly? Caring for your family? Being there when no one else was?" "Emma had another allergic reaction yesterday," Daniel continued calmly, "after you prepared her special vitamin shake." "Children have allergies, Daniel. It's not my fault the doctors can't properly diagnose her. The hospital analyzed the pills you brought in, the ones you claimed Dr. Mercer prescribed." Daniel maintained eye contact. "They contained ipecac syrup. Do you know what that does, Stephanie?" She remained standing, her knuckles white as she gripped the back of her chair. "Those weren't... There must be a mistake." "No mistake. You've been making Emma sick, just like you did with my mother, just like you might have done with Jessica." At the mention of Jessica, something changed in Stephanie's expression, a flicker of calculation, then resolve. She sat down again, her demeanor shifting. Tears welled in her eyes. "Daniel, please," she whispered, reaching for his hand. "You have to understand. I was trying to help. Emma has so many health issues that those incompetent doctors kept missing. I had to de-emphasize her symptoms sometimes, so they would take it seriously." Daniel withdrew his hand. "By poisoning her? By making her vomit and break out in hives?" "It wasn't poisoning," Stephanie insisted. her tone reasonable, almost clinical. It was controlled exposure to trigger a visible response. Doctors don't listen unless they can see symptoms. I did it to protect her. Daniel felt sick. She was actually admitting it, justifying it as care rather than abuse. And my mother, were you protecting her too when you switched her heart medication? Stephanie's eyes hardened briefly before softening again. Rose was interfering with Emma's treatment plan. She didn't understand what was best. She was turning you against me, making you doubt my medical expertise. I just needed her to be a little less sharp for a while, until she understood I was helping. And Jessica? Daniel asked, his voice nearly breaking on his wife's name. Was she interfering too? A calculating look crossed Stephanie's face. She seemed to be weighing her options, deciding how much to admit, how much to deny. Finally, she sighed dramatically. Jessica was very ill, Daniel. You know that. She wasn't responding to conventional treatments. I tried alternative approaches, things I'd seen work in my practice. If her doctors had been more open-minded, maybe things would have been different. Different how? Daniel pressed. She wouldn't have fallen down the stairs. Stephanie flinched almost imperceptibly. That was a tragic accident. I was devastated. Were you, or was it convenient? After all, her accident left Emma without a mother, and me a grieving single father. The perfect targets for someone like you. How dare you? Stephanie's voice rose in indignation. I loved Jessica. I took care of her when you were too busy working to notice how much she was suffering. You took care of her right into an accidental fall, Daniel said coldly. Just like you were planning to do with Emma and me at the lake house this weekend. Stephanie went very still. What are you talking about? The reservations you made, the special emergency medications you packed, Dr. Mercer's convenient plans to be in the same area. Were we both going to have unfortunate accidents, Stephanie? After all, with both of us gone, as Emma's stepmother, you'd have control of everything, the house, the life insurance, my mother's estate. You've lost your mind, Stephanie whispered, but her eyes darted to the door as if calculating an escape route. Have I? Daniel slid another document across the table, a printout of life insurance policies in his and Emma's names, with Stephanie listed as the sole beneficiary, policies he had no memory of signing. When did I authorize these, Stephanie? The EE signatures look like mine, but I never saw these documents. You signed them months ago, she insisted. You were dealing with so much after Rose's passing, it's not surprising you don't remember. Like I don't remember changing my will, or adding you to all my bank accounts, or the power of attorney documents. Stephanie's composure was cracking. This is all a misunderstanding. I was trying to make things easier for you, handling the paperwork, making sure everything was in order. In order for what? Daniel asked quietly. For our convenient accidents? For your next identity? In the next town with the next vulnerable family? She stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You clearly need help, Daniel. Grief has distorted your thinking. I'm going to speak with Emma's doctors myself. As she moved toward the door, Daniel said, The police analyzed the contents of your hidden compartment in our bathroom. Stephanie froze, her hand on the doorknob. Empty capsules, powdered medications, syringes, ipecac, insulin, potassium chloride. An interesting collection for someone who claims to be helping. She turned slowly, her expression now cold and calculating. You went through my personal things, invaded my privacy. Like you invaded my mother's privacy. Read her journals, threw away her letters to me. Daniel stood facing her. It's over, Stephanie. The police have everything. The evidence my mother collected, the surveillance footage of you tampering with medications, your meetings with Dr. Mercer, the falsified prescriptions. You can't prove anything, she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Emma's medical tests show consistently elevated levels of antihistamines and ipecac in her system, levels that drop when you're not controlling her food and medicine. The capsules you tried to give her during her last reaction were analyzed. They weren't medication at all. I made one mistake, Stephanie said desperately. I grabbed the wrong pills in a moment of panic. That doesn't make me some kind of monster. One mistake? Daniel laughed bitterly. Your entire presence in our lives has been one calculated move after another. My mother saw through you. Emma saw through you. I was the only one too blind to see what was happening right in front of me." Stephanie's demeanor suddenly shifted. The vulnerable, misunderstood caregiver vanished, replaced by something colder, harder. "You have no idea what you're doing, Daniel. No idea who you're dealing with." "I think I do," Daniel replied steadily. "You're not the first person to target vulnerable families this way. There's a clinical term for what you do: factitious disorder imposed on another. You create medical crises to make yourself necessary, to control people, to be the hero." "Amateur psychology," Stephanie sneered. "Is that what that idiot detective told you? Reynolds has been following me for weeks. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you he tried to interfere in my previous marriages? 2, he's obsessed with me." The admission that she knew Reynolds, that she was aware of his investigation, hung in the air between them. "Previous marriages," Daniel repeated. "So you admit there were others before me? Other families you infiltrated? Other children you made sick?" Realizing her mistake, Stephanie backpedaled. "That's not what I meant. I had one previous marriage that ended amicably. Reynolds has some kind of vendetta. He's feeding you lies." "Then explain the multiple identities," Daniel challenged. "Explain the falsified nursing credentials. Explain why Emma gets sick only when you're caring for her." "Coincidences, misunderstandings." "Your paranoia." Her voice rose with each denial. "I did everything for this family, everything. When no one else cared enough, I was there. I deserved what I was building here." "Building or destroying?" Daniel asked quietly. "My mother suspicious and isolated. Emma terrified and ill. Me manipulated and deceived. You weren't building a family, Stephanie. You were creating victims." She lunged forward suddenly, her composure completely shattered. "You ungrateful bastard! After everything I've done, I could have had anyone, but I chose you. I protected Emma from Jessica's incompetent care. I managed your mother's decline. With dignity. I gave you a purpose when you were nothing but a pathetic widower drowning in self-pity." Her words hit like physical blows, but Daniel stood his ground. "Is that what you told yourself to justify what you did to Jessica, to my mother, to Emma?" "I did what was necessary," Stephanie hissed. "Jessica was weak. She would have lingered for years, a burden on everyone. I accelerated the inevitable. Your mother was interfering. She needed to be managed, and Emma—" She stopped abruptly, seeming to realize what she was admitting. The door opened behind her. Detective Reynolds stood there with 2 police officers. "Stephanie Prescott Wilson," Reynolds said formally, "you're under arrest for child endangerment, elder abuse, fraud, and identity theft. Additional charges may follow pending further investigation. You have the right to remain silent." As the officers led a shell-shocked Stephanie away, Daniel collapsed into his chair, overwhelmed by what had just transpired. Her confession, captured, on the hidden microphone, had been more damning than he could have imagined. Reynolds sat beside him. "You did well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." She admitted more than enough to hold her while we build the rest of the case. "She all but confessed to causing Jessica's accident," Daniel said, his voice hollow. "My wife, my mother, they both suffered because I brought that woman into our lives." "Don't go down that road," Reynolds advised. "Predators like Stephanie are experts at finding vulnerabilities and exploiting them. You're not responsible for her actions." Daniel nodded numbly. "What happens now?" "Now," Reynolds said, standing, "you focus on Emma. The rest, the legal proceedings, the investigation into Jessica's accident, the connection with Dr. Mercer, all of that can wait. Your daughter needs you whole and present." Daniel took a deep breath, centering himself. Reynolds was right. Emma was what mattered now. Everything else was secondary. "Thank you," he said, extending his hand to the detective. "My mother was right to trust you." Reynolds shook his hand firmly. "Rose was a remarkable woman, stubborn as hell, sharp as a tack. She loved you and Emma fiercely. Whatever happens with Stephanie, remember that. You had people fighting for you even when you didn't know you needed fighting for." The thought brought both pain and comfort. Daniel stood, squaring his shoulders. It was time to go to Emma, to begin the long process of healing the wounds Stephanie had inflicted, visible and invisible, on his family. Chapter 6. The Healing Process. 3 weeks after Stephanie's arrest, Daniel sat in Dr. Harriet Finch's waiting room, thumbing through a magazine without really seeing the pages. The child psychologist had come highly recommended for cases of medical abuse, and Emma had been seeing her twice weekly since her release from the hospital. The door to the inner office opened, and Emma emerged with Dr. Finch, a warm, grandmotherly woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses. "Daddy!" Emma ran to him, her face brighter than it had been in months. "Dr. Finch let me paint today. I made a picture of us at Uncle Jake's lake house." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Daniel said, hugging her tightly. "Why don't you get your coat while I talk to Dr. Finch for a minute?" As Emma skipped to the coat rack, Dr. Finch gestured Daniel into her office. "She's making remarkable progress," the psychologist said once they were seated. "Children are incredibly resilient, especially when they have a stable, supportive parent." "She still has nightmares," Daniel said, "and she's afraid to take even children's vitamins." "That's to be expected," Dr. Finch assured him. Emma experienced a profound betrayal of trust from someone in a caregiving role. The fear of medication is a natural protective response. "We're working on it gradually, using play therapy and positive associations." "What about the nightmares?" "They should diminish over time. It helps that Emma is talking about her experiences rather than suppressing them. Your openness about the situation, explaining things in age-appropriate ways without hiding the truth, has been tremendously beneficial." Daniel nodded, grateful for the validation. He'd wrestled with how much to tell Emma about Stephanie's actions, ultimately deciding that gentle honesty was better than protective secrecy. "When do you think she'll be ready to go back to school?" "I'd suggest waiting until after the preliminary hearing," Dr. Finch advised. "Once that's behind you both, returning to normal routines will be an important step in recovery. In the meantime, the home tutoring seems to be working well." "And what about—" Daniel hesitated. "The psychological evaluation for the court. Will Emma have to testify?" Dr. Finch's expression softened. "I'll be submitting my report next week. Given Emma's age and the nature of the abuse, the prosecutor will likely use my professional assessment rather than subjecting her to direct testimony. However, she may still need to answer some questions in a controlled, supportive environment." The thought of Emma facing any part of the legal proceedings made Daniel's stomach clench, but he nodded in acceptance. "We'll do whatever is necessary. I just want to protect her from any more trauma." "The best protection you can offer is exactly what you're doing, being present, validating her feelings, and helping her understand that what happened wasn't her fault." Dr. Finch closed her notebook. "How are you doing, Daniel? Are you still seeing Dr. Matthews?" Daniel had begun his own therapy sessions shortly after Stephanie's arrest, recognizing that he too needed help processing the betrayal and manipulation. "Yes, it's helping, I think. Hard, but necessary." "Good. Emma needs you healthy and whole." Dr. Finch stood, signaling the end of their time. "Same schedule next week." "We'll be here," Daniel promised. Outside, Emma was waiting patiently by the coat rack. As they walked to the car, she slipped her small hand into his. "Daddy, can we go? See Mommy and Grandma Rose today?" Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Of course we can, Em." The cemetery was peaceful in the late afternoon sunlight. Emma placed hand-picked wildflowers on both graves, while Daniel stood back, giving her space for her private conversations with her mother and grandmother. "She talks to them a lot," observed a voice beside him. Daniel turned to find his brother Jake approaching, hands in the pockets of his worn leather jacket. "It seems to comfort her," Daniel replied, embracing his younger brother. "Thanks for coming." Jake had flown in from Chicago when news of Stephanie's arrest broke, putting his architectural firm on hold to support Daniel and Emma. The brothers had always been close, though their relationship had become strained during Stephanie's time in their lives, another casualty of her manipulative influence. "How'd the therapy session go?" Jake asked, watching Emma arranging her flowers. "Good. Dr. Finch says she's making progress," Daniel sighed. "Better than me, probably." Jake clapped him on the shoulder. Don't be so hard on yourself, Danny. You were played by a professional manipulator. Even Mum didn't figure it out right away. But she did figure it out, Daniel said quietly, and I dismissed her concerns as confusion or jealousy. If I had just listened... If, Jake cut him off. That road leads nowhere good, brother. Mom wouldn't want you torturing yourself with hypotheticals. They stood in companionable silence, watching Emma as she finished her floral arrangements and skipped back toward them. "Uncle Jake!" she exclaimed, throwing herself into his arms. "Are you coming for dinner? I'm helping Daddy make lasagna." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, Squirt," Jake grinned, hoisting her onto his shoulders. "Race you to the car." As Jake galloped away, with a giggling Emma, Daniel lingered a moment longer at the graves. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm trying to make it right. For all of us." Back at home, they had moved temporarily into Jake's lake house while their own home was being prepared for sale. Emma bustled around the kitchen, carefully tearing lettuce leaves for salad, while the brothers prepared the main dish. "So," Jake said casually, layering noodles in the baking dish. "Heard anything about the hearing?" Daniel glanced at Emma, then lowered his voice. "Reynolds called this morning. They've built a solid case. Multiple identities, falsified credentials, evidence of medical tampering. Dr. Mercer is cooperating in exchange for a plea deal. Apparently, he's provided details about their arrangement going back years." "And Jessica's case?" Daniel shook his head slightly, indicating they would discuss it later. "Emma, honey, why don't you set the table, the fancy way like Grandma Rose taught you?" Pleased with the important task, Emma scampered off to arrange plates and silverware in the dining room. "The medical examiner has reopened the investigation," Daniel said once she was out of earshot. "Based on the new evidence and Stephanie's partial confession, they're treating Jessica's fall as suspicious rather than accidental. There's talk of exhumation to test for traces of anticoagulants or other substances." Jake winced. "Jesus, Danny, can you handle that? Digging everything. Up again, literally and figuratively?" "I have to," Daniel said firmly. "For Jessica. For Mom. For Emma. The truth matters, no matter how painful." Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Daniel's phone. It was Reynolds. "Daniel, we have a situation," the detective said without preamble. "Stephanie's been granted bail." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "How is that possible? She's a flight risk with multiple identities." Her attorney argued that she has medical needs that can't be adequately addressed in custody. Pregnancy complications. "She's not even really pregnant," Daniel hissed, moving further from the dining room where Emma was carefully arranging napkins. "The ultrasound confirmed it was fake, a silicone prosthetic." "I know," Reynolds said grimly, but her attorney submitted medical documentation from Dr. Mercer claiming otherwise, and the judge erred on the side of caution. "She's under house arrest with an ankle monitor, but she's out." Daniel finished, a cold dread settling in his stomach. "Where? Not in our house?" "No. She's staying with a cousin in Hartford. There's a restraining order in place. She can't come within 500 feet of you or Emma, and she's surrendered her passport." "That won't stop her," Daniel said, thinking of the multiple identities they'd uncovered. "She'll find a way around the pole. Restrictions if she wants to. We've increased patrols in your area, and I've assigned an officer to keep an eye on the lake house. This is just temporary, Daniel. The evidence against her is overwhelming." After hanging up, Daniel stood motionless. In the kitchen, the news settling over him like a physical weight. "Danny, what is it?" Jake asked, concern etched on his face. Daniel explained the situation in hushed tones. Jake's expression hardened. "She's not getting anywhere near Emma. I promise you that." "I know," Daniel said, rubbing his temples. I thought we were past the immediate danger, that Emma could at least feel safe while the legal process played out." "She is safe," Jake insisted. "Between you, me, Reynolds, and half the Connecticut police force, Stephanie doesn't stand a chance of getting close to her." Daniel nodded, trying to believe it. "Let's not tell Emma tonight. She's having a good day. I don't want to ruin it with more fear." Dinner was a surprisingly cheerful affair, with Emma chattering about her art therapy projects and Jake regaling them with exaggerated tales from his college days. For a few hours, the shadow of Stephanie's release receded, allowing glimpses of the normal family life Daniel hoped to rebuild. After Emma was tucked in bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit and nightlight glowing softly, the brothers sat on the deck overlooking the lake, each nursing a beer in the cool evening air. She asked about Jessica again today, Daniel said, watching the moonlight ripple across the water. During therapy, wanted to know if Stephanie made Mommy fall down the stairs. Jake winced. What did the therapist say? That sometimes bad people do things that hurt others, but that the police were investigating to find out exactly what happened. She told Emma it wasn't her job to figure it out, that she just needed to focus on feeling safe and sharing her own experiences. Smart lady, Jake commented. Yeah. Daniel took a long sip of his beer. The thing is, I don't know what I'll tell Emma if it's confirmed that Stephanie caused Jessica's accident. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her stepmother might have hurt her real mother? Jake was silent for a moment. You tell her the truth, in a way she can understand, the same way you've been doing. Kids know when adults are hiding things, and their imaginations often create scenarios worse than reality. I suppose, Daniel sighed, I just want to protect her from more pain. You can't protect her from pain, Danny, Jake said gently. But you can teach her how to face it with courage and honesty. That's what Mom would have done. The mention of their mother brought a sad smile to Daniel's face. She would have seen through Stephanie from day one. She did see through her. Eventually, Jake reminded him, and she made sure you had what you needed to protect Emma, even if it took time for the pieces to come together. They sat in contemplative silence, the lapping of lake water against the shore a soothing backdrop to their thoughts. I've been thinking about Mom's nursing foundation, Daniel said finally. The one she started for children with chronic illnesses. I want to revive it, maybe expand its mission to include education about medical abuse and resources for families recovering from it. Jake nodded approvingly. Rose Wilson Memorial Foundation. I like it. Mom would be proud. It would give all this some meaning, Daniel mused. Some purpose beyond just surviving it. That's how healing works, Jake said. You take the broken pieces and build something new, something stronger. Inside the house, Emma's screams suddenly pierced the night. Both men bolted from their chairs and raced inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time to reach her bedroom. Emma was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, her small body shaking with sobs. She was here, she cried as Daniel gathered her into his arms. Stephanie was here. She had the special medicine again. It was just a nightmare, sweetheart, Daniel soothed, rocking her gently. Stephanie isn't here. You're safe. Uncle Jake and I are right here with you. As Emma's sobs subsided into hiccups, Jake checked the windows and doors, more to reassure Emma than out of genuine concern that Stephanie had somehow circumvented the restraining order, ankle monitor, and police surveillance in the few hours since her release. All clear, Em, he reported, sitting on the edge of the bed. Just us chickens here. Emma wiped her eyes. It felt so real, Daddy. She was standing right there, and she had the pink pills, and she said if I didn't take them, she would what, Emma? Daniel prompted gently when she trailed off. She would make you go away like Mommy, Emma whispered. Down the stairs. Daniel and Jake exchanged a look over Emma's head. Even in nightmares, the truth had a way of surfacing. Emma, listen to me, Daniel said firmly, tilting her chin up to meet his eyes. Stephanie can never hurt us again. She can't come near us. There are policemen making sure of that, and Uncle Jake and I will always protect you. Emma nodded, still trembling slightly. Can I sleep in your room tonight? Of course you can, Daniel assured her. As he carried her toward the master bedroom, he couldn't help but glance back at the shadows of her room, a chill running down his spine despite his confident words to his daughter. Stephanie was out there somewhere, under house arrest, but still a lurking threat. And despite all the legal protections and reassurances, Daniel knew one fundamental truth about the woman who had infiltrated their lives. She would not give up easily on what she considered hers. Chapter 7. Truth and reconciliation. The courtroom was hushed as Daniel took the witness stand. 6 months had passed since Stephanie's arrest, and the trial was finally underway after numerous delays and legal maneuvers. Daniel straightened his tie, his eyes briefly meeting Jake's in the gallery where his brother sat beside Emma's therapist, Dr. Finch. Emma herself was at school. They had all agreed that the courtroom was no place for her, though her recorded testimony had been presented earlier in the proceedings. Mr. Wilson, the prosecutor Andrea Levine, approached the stand. Could you describe for the court how you came to suspect that your wife was deliberately causing your daughter's medical issues? Daniel took a deep breath. It began with finding letters my mother had written before she became ill. She had noticed patterns in Emma's allergic reactions. They only occurred when Stephanie prepared her food or administered her medication. My mother had been documenting her suspicions and collecting evidence. And why do you think your mother was suspicious of the defendant? Objection, Stephanie's attorney called out. Calls for speculation. I'll rephrase, Ms. Levine said smoothly. Mr. Wilson, did your mother communicate her specific concerns to you before her illness? She tried to, Daniel admitted, regret evident in his voice. But I dismissed them as confusion or medication side effects. It wasn't until I found her hidden documentation and Emma had another serious reaction that I began to seriously consider the possibility. As Daniel continued his testimony, he avoided looking at Stephanie, who sat at the defense table in a modest beige dress, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, a stark contrast to her usual polished appearance. Her attorney had clearly advised a makeover to appear more sympathetic, less calculating. The prosecution methodically built their case: the falsified medical credentials, the pattern of induced illness, the multiple identities, the financial motives. The defense strategy focused on portraying Stephanie as a well-meaning but misguided caregiver who had genuinely believed Emma needed medical intervention, a desperate attempt to reframe intentional harm as overprotective concern. When the redirect examination concluded, Daniel stepped down from the witness stand feeling drained but relieved. His testimony was over, and he had done his best to convey the truth of what their family had endured. Outside the courthouse, Reynolds waited with an update on the investigation into Jessica's accident. The toxicology results from the exhumation came back, the detective said quietly. Significant levels of warfarin were detected. It's an anticoagulant that would have caused dizziness, weakness, internal bleeding. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the confirmation of what he had already come to believe. So Jessica didn't simply fall, she was being poisoned. Systematically, Reynolds confirmed. The ME believes the warfarin would have caused severe disorientation and weakness in the days leading up to her fall. Given Stephanie's role as her caregiver and her access to medications, she'll face additional charges? Reynolds nodded. The DA is preparing to file them once this trial concludes. The evidence is circumstantial but compelling, especially in context with the current case. As they walked toward the parking lot, Daniel asked the question that had been nagging at him. Have you ever seen someone like her before? Someone capable of this level of calculation and deception? Reynolds considered the question. A few times, over my career. They're rare, but dangerous precisely because they operate where we're most vulnerable, in relationships built on trust and care. They weaponize our natural instinct to believe in the goodness of others. How do you ever trust again after something like this? You learn to balance trust with awareness, Reynolds said. Most people aren't Stephanie, Daniel. Don't let her take more from you than she already has. The trial continued for another 2 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about factitious disorder imposed on another. Forensic accountants detailed the financial manipulations, and medical professionals confirmed the inconsistencies in Emma's treatment. The most damning testimony came from Dr. Mercer, who in exchange for a reduced sentence described his arrangement with Stephanie to provide unnecessary prescriptions and falsify medical records. Throughout it all, Daniel maintained his focus on Emma's recovery. She had returned to school part-time, was continuing therapy, and had slowly begun to regain her confidence and sense of security. The nightmares still came occasionally, but less frequently, and she was finally willing to take legitimate medications when necessary. A significant breakthrough in her healing process. On a crisp fall morning, as orange and gold leaves swirled across the lawn of their new home, a cozy colonial in a different neighborhood where no one knew their story, Daniel received the call he had been waiting for. "The jury's back," Reynolds said simply. "They've reached a verdict." In the courtroom, Daniel sat rigidly as the jury foreman stood. Beside him, Jake squeezed his shoulder in silent support. On the count of child endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. A collective exhale seemed to sweep through the gallery. On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. Daniel closed his eyes, thinking of his mother. On the counts of fraud, identity theft, and practicing medicine without a license, we find the defendant guilty. One by one, the verdicts were read, guilty on all counts. Stephanie remained motionless. At the defense table, her expression unreadable. Only when the judge ordered her taken into custody, immediately did a flicker of emotion cross her face, not remorse or fear, but something closer to indignation, as if the world had failed to recognize her right to play God with other people's lives. As the bailiff led her away, Stephanie turned suddenly, her eyes finding Daniel's across the courtroom. For a brief moment, the mask slipped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. Then she was gone, disappearing through the door to the holding cells. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with microphones and cameras, eager for a statement from the family, at the center of the sensational case. Daniel had avoided the media throughout the trial, but today, with the verdict delivered and justice served, he felt ready to speak, not to satisfy their curiosity, but to acknowledge the truth publicly, and perhaps help others who might be facing similar situations. "My family has experienced a profound betrayal by someone who presented herself as a caregiver, but was, in reality, the source of our suffering," he began, his voice steady. "Today's verdict cannot undo the harm that was done, but it affirms the truth and ensures that others will be protected from similar harm." He thanked the prosecution team, Detective Reynolds, and the medical professionals who had helped uncover the deception. Most importantly, he acknowledged his mother's foresight and determination. Rose Wilson recognized the danger when no one else did. She protected her family, even when she was no longer able to be with us. Her courage and persistence made today's justice possible. As the reporters called out questions about sentencing, expectations, and the pending investigation into Jessica's death, Daniel held up a hand. "I have nothing more to say about the case. My focus now is on helping my daughter heal and rebuild our lives." That evening, as Daniel tucked Emma into bed in her new room, painted sunshine yellow at her request with cloud-shaped shelves holding books and stuffed animals, she asked the question he had been expecting since the verdict. "Is Stephanie going to jail forever, Daddy?" Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "For a very long time, yes. She won't be able to hurt anyone else." Emma nodded, processing this. "And she really did make Mommy fall down the stairs." "The police believe she made Mommy very sick, which caused her to fall," Daniel explained gently. "It wasn't an accident, but it also wasn't your fault or my fault. It was Stephanie's choice to do something very wrong. Why did she do it?" Emma's small face was troubled. Why did she want to hurt us? It was the question that had haunted Daniel throughout the ordeal, the one that had no satisfying answer. "Some people are broken inside in ways we can't see," he said finally. "They don't feel love and care the way most people do. Instead, they want power and control. Stephanie wanted to control our family, our lives, and when people got in her way, like Mommy or Grandma Rose or eventually you, she tried to remove those obstacles." "That's really sad," Emma said after a moment's reflection, "to not know how to love people," Daniel marveled at his daughter's capacity for compassion, even towards someone who had caused her such harm. "Yes, it is sad, but what's important is that we do know how to love, and we have each other, and Uncle Jake, and all the people who helped us." Emma yawned, snuggling deeper under her comforter. "Can we plant more flowers for Mommy and Grandma tomorrow? The yellow ones they like?" "Sunflowers," Daniel smiled. "Yes, we can definitely do that." After Emma fell asleep, Daniel sat on the back porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear autumn sky. Jake joined him, passing him a mug of hot cider. "You, okay?" Jake asked simply. Daniel considered the question. Getting there, the verdict helps, knowing she can't hurt anyone else. "The sentencing recommendation is impressive," Jake commented. 20 to 30 years, with the additional charges for Jessica's case still pending. "It's not about revenge," Daniel said quietly. "It's about prevention, making sure she can't do this to another family." "I know." Jake was silent for a moment. "Have you thought more about the foundation?" Daniel nodded. "The paperwork is almost complete. The Rose Wilson Foundation for Family Protection. We'll focus on education about medical abuse, support for families recovering from it, and resources for medical professionals to identify warning signs." "Mom would be proud," Jake said, raising his mug in a small toast. "Jessica too." "I hope so." Daniel looked up at the stars, wondering if somewhere, somehow, the two women who had loved Emma so fiercely were at peace, knowing she was safe at Sandsty. Spring came to Connecticut, bringing with it renewal and growth. In the garden behind their new home, Emma carefully planted sunflower seeds along the fence, her small hands patting the soil with solemn concentration. "Grandma Rose said sunflowers always face the sun," she informed Daniel as they worked. "They follow the light all day long." "That's right," Daniel smiled. "It's called heliotropism, turning toward the light." "Like us," Emma said with the simple wisdom of childhood. "We were in the dark for a while, but now we're turning toward the light again." Daniel paused, struck by the profound truth in her observation. "Exactly like us, Em." Later that afternoon, they visited the newly established offices of the Rose Wilson Foundation. The modest space in downtown Hartford featured photographs of Rose and Jessica on the walls, alongside educational materials about medical abuse and family protection. The Foundation's first initiative, a training program for healthcare providers, to recognize signs of factitious disorder imposed on another, had already garnered interest from hospitals across New England. Daniel had found purpose in transforming their painful experience into protection for others, while Emma had embraced her role as the Foundation's junior ambassador, sharing her story in age-appropriate ways with other children affected by medical abuse. As they walked through the office, Emma proudly showing Jake the new children's corner she had helped design, Daniel felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. The road to healing wasn't linear or predictable. There were still difficult days, unanswered questions, moments of grief and anger, but they were moving forward together, one day at a time. The final sentencing hearing had delivered justice. 30 years for Stephanie, with no possibility of parole for at least 20. Dr. Mercer received 15 years for his role as an accomplice. The additional investigation into Jessica's death had resulted in involuntary manslaughter charges, ensuring that Stephanie would likely spend the rest of her life in prison. But justice, while necessary, was only part of their journey. The harder work, rebuilding trust, processing trauma, creating new traditions and memories, continued daily. Emma's resilience inspired Daniel's own healing. Together, they were learning that survival itself was an act of defiance against those who had sought to harm them. That evening, as a spring thunderstorm rolled through, Emma asked to sleep in Daniel's room. These requests came less frequently now, but Daniel welcomed them, understanding that recovery had its own timeline. "Daddy," Emma whispered as lightning illuminated the room, "do you think the bad feelings will ever go away completely?" Daniel stroked her hair gently. "I think they'll get smaller and visit less often, and we'll get stronger at handling them when they do come." Emma considered this. "Dr. Finch says scars are proof that we're stronger than whatever tried to hurt us." "Dr. Finch is very wise," Daniel smiled. "I have scars inside," Emma said thoughtfully. "You can't see them, but they're there." "I have them too," Daniel admitted. "But you know what? Those scars connect us to each other, and to Mommy and to Grandma Rose. They're part of our story now." Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied with this perspective. "Our story isn't over, though. We get to write the next chapters ourselves." Daniel kissed her forehead, marveling at her insight. "That's exactly right, Em. and they're going to be beautiful chapters. As Emma drifted to sleep, Daniel reflected on their journey from darkness to light. The truth had been painful, but necessary. The healing was ongoing but possible, and the future, despite everything they had endured, held promise. Outside, the storm began to subside, rain giving way to gentle spring moonlight. In a few months, the sunflowers would stand tall in their garden, faces turned toward the light, a living symbol of resilience, growth, and the endurance.